So let's kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into kind of women in capitalism. So we initially as capitalism emerges, right, as it emerges as particularly industrialized commodity production, domestic labor is devalued. And really practically what this means is that factory production increases, and as more and more people are thrown out of agricultural production and they have to sell their labor power to factory owners and get a wage in order to survive. This means that because more and more people are now not working on the land, and more and more people lack the means of subsistence, or they lack the ability to make what they need to survive. They have to go earn it. So literally it happens that households stop producing the use values that they have done for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? The items that they produced at home, often by women, like candles and soap or cloth, these become commodities to be purchased on the market. And so factories make them, that makes money for the capitalist, and people have to buy them. And guess what? That also makes money for the capitalist. And then people aren't at home, and so they go work for the capitalist, which makes money for the capitalist. So folks have to earn money to purchase things that they used to make. And the site where they used to be made now, the home or domestic sphere, is completely devalued. So we're used to thinking then about this split between domestic and industrial production, or Marx also talks about that split as a split between household and social production, or production that requires a lot of people and a large accumulation of fixed capital. We rightly think about this as linked to the sexual division of labor, because the domestic sphere has been a sphere of women's work and the men's sphere has been one of paid labor. And this solidified, exactly as you said at the beginning, in this kind of post-World War II vision of the nuclear family. But it never, ever described all households, not in the U.S., not in Europe. If we just think about the U.S., working class women and children, even in the 19th century, were in factories and working under horrible conditions and for terrible wages. And one of the things that made these conditions especially bad for women is that their husbands and fathers controlled what they could earn. They could take the husbands and fathers could take the wages earned by women and children, because women were under the legal authority of men, right? Women couldn't own property, they couldn't sign contracts, they couldn't get a mortgage, couldn't testify in court, obviously they couldn't vote. I mean, until the 1970s, after decades of women's struggles, only then were women able to even have credit cards. So working class men have fought for a family wage that's really important, enough to support a family, but once women entered the workforce, women need to start winning, and did start earning wages too. So we've got to be really critical of any of this effort to return to the family wage. The guy who wrote, J.D. Vance, he wrote Hillbilly Elegy. He's campaigning directly on a slogan for the family wage, meaning women should not be in the workplace. Yes, it's good to pay everybody more, but on the family wage, it means you're just paying men more because they're supposed to be supporting their wives. Additionally, I was talking about the conditions for working class families. We also, of course, have to mention that Black women in the U.S. have only rarely been housewives in the domestic sphere. Most of the time, Black women have had to earn money working in other people's homes and caring for other people's children and cleaning up their messes. And Black women have had these domestic jobs, repeating the patterns of the plantation, because racist and sexist employment practices blocked them from opportunities, and because Black men were blocked from decently waged jobs available to white male workers. Some of the most interesting stuff written by Black communist women in the 30s and 40s is pointing out their different position because Black men were blocked from decently waged jobs. Like Black men never got the family wage, or only very rarely after they were able in the early 50s to get better jobs in the auto industry. But for the most part, they were blocked from decently waged jobs. And it's only with really fierce and committed struggle that Black people and women have been able to access that. So since the late 70s, with the availability of birth control and abortion, the number of women in the engaging in paid work or in the waged workplace has increased dramatically. Now it's a roughly 57% of women who are in the paid labor force, and about 69% of men. So it's still more men in the paid labor force, but about 57% of all women work for an income. And one of the reasons, in addition to women wanting to work, is the majority of households depend on the income from two adults to make ends meet. And often this isn't even enough. And the adults might have to have more than one job in order to, pay the rent and pay the bills. So I think in general, what we need to think about when we think about the effects of Roe now because of women's changed labor position is that it's going to be devastating for all working people, right? It's going to have a huge impact on women's ability to work outside the home. It's going to have a huge impact on expenses in the home, which we're experiencing a lot of inflation right now. So we can just imagine if there's more and more mouths to feed and kids to close, and then daycare to provide, which is also super expensive. And workers know this. Right? All workers know that women will still have abortions because the costs of not having them are so great. It's just going to be more and more dangerous and more risky for them. And it's also going to increase the presence and power of police and surveillance in our lives, I think, in ways that we have not yet even begun to imagine. So women have been in the workforce now for heavily in the workforce for over 40 years, and are not going to accept being forced back into the home. But it's going to then be a fight over how can they control their reproduction. It's going to be super hard.